Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. My name is Oliver. 7 years ago, I was 26 years old and had what I thought was a dream girlfriend, Sophia. Neither of us wanted children, nor did we want to get married. We have our own financial accounts. Sophia is a petite but somewhat fleshy woman, which suits me just fine. I can't stand those skinny types. We planned almost everything, even how to pay the bills after we started living together. Half of our respective incomes went to bills, and if there was a shortfall, we worked it out further. Everything is perfect. In my life, I've only had 3 jobs. The first is the director of adult videos. Yes, you heard me right. The second was a hazmat cleaner, where I cleaned up car accidents, crime scenes, wrongful deaths, and so on. Now, I'm a welder. Sophia isn't perfect, but she's close enough. She doesn't have any health problems, although I have some personal health problems, but nothing major. I have a heart condition, and sudden shocks cause an extreme adrenaline response in me. I had my first heart attack at the age of 23 from a car horn, and the seizures that followed over the next few days revealed to us the severity of my condition. I now need to be on beta blockers and anti-seizure meds for life. Even without insurance, the cost of these drugs is not very high. I used to have fairly violent seizures, biting my lip a couple of times, but the few times I had them when I was alone, I woke up just slightly dazed and unperturbed. There are a few things I wish I had done differently in our love life. Sophia had never been very fond of oral sex, or more accurately, had refused it altogether, and wouldn't let me touch her back door. 2 things I'd never actually done in a previous relationship, but I'm willing to give that up for her because I can imagine spending the rest of my life with her. She was my best friend, the love of my life. We still have sex regularly, a couple times a week, and she obviously enjoys it. There are ways to tell if a woman is pretending, and she's definitely not pretending. It was the peak of my life, and even though it's been years, it still feels like a honeymoon period. And then, one day, it all came crashing down. It was a Saturday night, and I had dinner for us and some of her family. I made a self-serve taco station, and the entree was a brisket that I grilled myself, with all the toppings you can think of, all homemade, never one of those Taco Bell flavoring powders. Especially my brisket. Never used that stuff. After the dinner, the families left one by one. That evening, Sophia seemed interested in some extracurricular activities. It's been an anomaly this week. And the anomaly is that we haven't made out all week, which is unprecedented in our relationship. Even more unusual, she offered to dim the lights. We've been together since high school, since the first day of 9th grade. She excused herself that day to ask for her phone number to give to a friend, only to text her later that night to confess that she actually wanted it for herself. I still think it's a very cute move. Considering the whole week of abstinence, I gladly accepted her offer. However, even in the dim light, I noticed something unusual as we shifted into various positions. Before I go any further, guys, we know in our hearts that the gaze unconsciously falls on a specific spot during rear entry. This is human nature and does not have to be denied. Otherwise, you are fooling yourself. Back to the topic at hand. I noticed that Sophia's posterior seems to have some signs of use. Either she had just had an epic bowel movement and hadn't recovered from it yet, or she had been secretly smuggling drugs into the prison, or something unknown had invaded my girlfriend's private parts. For just a moment, my mind went blank. I felt my whole body stiffen, and then I lost consciousness. I had another seizure. When I regained consciousness, I found pillows under my head and Sophia's arms gently holding me up, mostly to keep me from rolling off the bed. After confirming that it was just a seizure, she didn't call an ambulance. For the uninitiated, the most important thing to do if you encounter someone who is experiencing a violent seizure is to make sure they don't hit their head. It doesn't matter if you bite your lip or your body twitches. The key is to protect your head. If there is a risk of falling from a height, such as I did this time in bed, do what you can to prevent it. Sophia's response was exactly the same as when we adjusted her medication dosage earlier. She seemed extraordinarily worried though. After all, this was the first time I'd had a seizure in 3 years. It took me hours to fully come to my senses, slowly recalling everything that had happened before the seizure. It was at that moment that I began to sort the whole thing out in my mind. We hadn't made out in a week, and when we finally did, she wanted to dim the lights. These two anomalies, along with the unusual appearance of her posterior, couldn't help but raise a number of questions for me. But I decided to press on for now and not question her directly. After the initial panic and shock subsided, I was confident that nothing like this would happen again anytime soon, so I began to scheme. She took careful care of me for the rest of that night. The medication I take ensures that even in a major accident like a tin car pileup, my heart rate will not go above a certain threshold. But under extreme stress, I can still have seizures. It's funny, you know? Some professional killers also take beta blockers to keep their breathing steady so they can do their job better. The first thing I need to do is find out more. Today, all sorts of high-tech spy equipment is at your fingertips. I found a couple of voice-activated microphones with micro SD card storage on Amazon that also have next-day delivery. I bought 3 of them for less than $100 total. Our mailwoman delivered them along with the usual mail at about 11 a.m. the next morning. I acted quickly while Sophia was still asleep. One miniature microphone was carefully tucked away at the bottom of her handbag, and the other was cleverly tucked into her cell phone case. She used one of those wallet-style cases that old ladies love, you know, the mom's favorites. The third was placed in her car by me. All of this was done quietly before she woke up. The next 2 weeks were nothing short of torture. There was a complete break in intimacy between us. It wasn't until Saturday of the second week that we had skin to skin again, but this time she was only willing to use the most traditional positions. Even so, I had trouble reaching orgasm, even after trying for an hour and a half. My mind kept flashing back to the fact that a strange man, a guy I'd probably never met, could do things to my girlfriend that she'd always refused to let me do, and it looked as if she'd done it willingly. Combined with the monotony of the positions, it was all too much for me to get excited about. The next day, Sunday, I woke up before her as usual. I woke up around 8 o'clock and immediately started recycling the knickknacks. I took them to my study and found hundreds of audio clips stored on the SD card. I transferred everything to my computer and began to comb through it carefully. I happened to be off that day and Sophia was working an 8-hour shift, so I had plenty of time to go through everything. Sophia usually wakes up around noon, which is normal since her job starts at 2 p.m. When she was out the door, I immediately plunged into this investigation. Although the recording could only hear her voice, it was enough. I listened carefully to each recording in date order. The first paragraph that caught my attention was a phone call she made from her car the morning after my seizure. Since she was in the car, the conversation was recorded on all 3 devices. The point of the conversation was when she said, "I'm not sure I can come back tonight. I'm still sore from last week. I was with Oliver last night, but I never let him do that. It's different between us. You get the slutty side of me. But tonight, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you next weekend." From this conversation, I deduced that their dating schedule was usually on Sunday nights, what she called girls' night out. This information is valuable to me. They meet once a week. The next important recording is her apologizing again for missing the date on the Sunday in the middle of our 2 weeks of not making out. At first, I was surprised to feel a twinge of relief at hearing this, but that feeling was soon replaced by anger. I realized that she was putting off seeing each other because she hadn't fully recovered after their first date. I sorted out the exact sequence of events. They rendezvoused on a Sunday, and the guy possessed her for her first backyard pleasure. The following week, nothing happened between me and her. Then the next Saturday night, the day I was preparing an elaborate taco dinner, I noticed the anomaly and had a seizure while we were making out. And the Sunday night after that they skipped their date, and the next Sunday after that as well. The timeline has now advanced to the middle of our 2-week abstinence period. In the second week of recordings, one segment caught my attention. It was a phone call on Friday, and she said she was feeling better and could meet up on Sunday. And just last night, Saturday, we finally got intimate, but only in the most common positions. It's Sunday, and nothing has happened between us in the last 2 weeks, except for last night. And tonight, it's her girls' night out. Sophia comes home from work usually after 11 p.m. She would take a shower, then change and go out. She never wore anything particularly revealing or sexy lingerie, just what she normally wore. I decided that tonight was the night to reveal everything. I wasn't going to confront them directly, but was going to use the recent lack of intimacy as a conversation starter. She had taken a shower and was changing when I called her over to talk. I calmly told her that we hadn't made out for a week before my last seizure, and that even less had happened between us since then, and I wanted to know why. She said she was afraid I would have another attack, and that reasoning did sound somewhat plausible. I asked her if she would be willing to give up the girls' party tonight for me if I felt good and wanted to make out with her right now. She told me she was still going out, but promised we could talk it over when she got back. At this moment, I felt a surge of anger burning in my heart. Not only did Sophia betray me, she used my seizures as an excuse to continue her cheating behavior while refusing to make out with me. This behavior just adds insult to injury in my opinion. My car is not particularly luxurious. It's an EVO, fast enough to get me where I need to go. As for how to find Sophia, it wasn't hard. Her entire family was using an app called Life 360, and I was added to the mix. This app came in handy once in an emergency situation, so I've kept it and usually don't care much about it. I opened the app and waited patiently for Sophia's location to stop. Then I started the car and began my move. The house she stopped at was located at the end of a throughway. I had the option to turn left or right, and the house was directly ahead. But there was one thing that overwhelmed me. That house belonged to my friend, my best friend Marcus. Come to think of it, when Marcus got divorced, I was the one who helped him through that difficult time. His ex-wife cheated on him with a banker, and I not only helped him find a good lawyer, but I also helped him pay some of his legal fees. My wife still seems to be helping him out of his divorce, even though it was over a year ago. I, on the other hand, became a stupid fool in the process. Usually on girls' night out, Sophia would be home around 2 a.m. So I have a pretty good idea when their happy hour will end. As I waited, my thoughts tumbled, anger mingling with a sense of betrayal. Finally, they walked out of the house together. I saw Marcus' hands on Sophia's waist. She had one arm around him and the other on his chest, looking up at him. They looked deep into each other's eyes and then kissed. Just then, I started the car. My EVO is not stock. It has been modified to have a very distinctive engine sound. Everyone recognizes the sound of their car, and Sophia is certainly no exception. She immediately turned her head when the engine roared to life. In that moment, our eyes met. I know she knows I know everything. It was at this moment that I felt that familiar, hazy sensation that is usually the precursor to impending unconsciousness. That morning, I purposely didn't take my anti-seizure medication, but this time, I forced myself to stay awake. Enraged, I decided to confront the betrayers myself. I turned off the engine and walked slowly toward them. Sophia had fear and shame written all over her face, while Marcus had a look of shock on his face. My mind went blank, and my only thought was to make them pay. "Well, it's you two," I said coldly, my voice filled with suppressed anger. I went at Marcus first, punching him hard in the face. He stumbled back, obviously not anticipating my reaction. "This is how you treat your friends?" I growled and threw a few more punches. Then I turned to Sophia, who was already trembling with fear. I grabbed her arm roughly and dragged her to the curb. "You want to be a bitch? Then show everyone what you really are." I roared and started tearing her clothes off. Sophia screamed and struggled, but I had lost my mind. I ripped off her blouse, exposing her underwear. "Look at your wonderful neighbors," I shouted to the empty street. Just then, Marcus came up from behind and tried to stop me. The three of us wrestled and rolled on the ground. I felt a punch in my nose and tasted blood in my mouth, but I didn't care. The anger and sense of betrayal completely dominated my behavior. Finally, after an unknown period of time, we lay exhausted on the ground. Sophia is curled up sobbing, disheveled. Marcus' face was covered in bruises, and he was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. I, on the other hand, was in pain all over, but the pain inside was far greater. I stood up with difficulty and looked down on them. "As of today, you are dead to me," I said coldly. "Sophia, I'll throw your things out on the street. By tonight, I want you out of my life." After that, I turned around and walked to my car. As I drove away, I saw them in the rearview mirror in a state of disarray. At that moment, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. but then a deep emptiness. When I got home, I started packing Sophia's things like a robot. Each item brought back memories, but I forced myself to continue. I threw everything in the front yard and sent her a text. "Your stuff is outside. Don't step foot in this house again." That night, I sat in my empty living room and let my tears flow freely. The anger, sadness, and sense of betrayal were so intertwined that they almost overwhelmed me. But I know that this is just the beginning of a new life, albeit one filled with bitterness and regret. After that crazy night, my life changed forever. The next morning, the police came knocking on the door. Apparently, Marcus and Sophia reported it to the police. I was charged with serious violent crimes and sexual harassment. The investigation lasted several weeks. The police found audio evidence I'd collected of Sophia's infidelity, as well as transcripts of our conversations. This evidence helped me in a way because they proved that my behavior was caused by extreme emotional stimulation. However, that doesn't completely excuse me. In the end, the court gave me a relatively light sentence of 1 year in prison, taking into account my previous good record and the particular circumstances of the case. They believe that my behavior is primarily due to emotional trauma and not out of an intrinsic propensity for violence. It was not a good time to be in prison. Every day, I regret my impulsive behavior that night. I lost my freedom, my job, everything I thought was good. But at the same time, I've had tons of time to reflect on my life. I started attending counseling sessions offered by the prison. Slowly, I learned how to control my emotions better and how to deal with betrayal and disappointment in a healthier way. While serving my sentence, I learned welding skills through the prison's vocational training program. It gave me a new direction, a chance to start over. Upon release from prison, I was placed in a halfway house. Adjusting to a life of freedom hasn't been easy, but I'm trying to rebuild my life. Through the help of the halfway house, I found work as a welder at a machine shop. This job gives me a sense of stability and fulfillment and makes me feel like I'm still a productive member of society. I gradually gained respect at work and even became a shop supervisor. Now, 5 years have passed since that crazy night. I still live in the same town, and sometimes I run into Sophia or Marcus on the street. We'd nod politely in greeting and then quickly walk away. Such encounters always bring back painful memories, but I've learned to live with them. I decided to stay single and focus on my career and personal growth. I bought a cottage in the suburbs and adopted a loyal German shepherd as a companion. Every night I sit on my porch and watch the sun set and contemplate the ups and downs of life. Sometimes I wonder if things would have been different if I could have controlled my anger that night. But I know that the past can't be changed, and all I can do is move forward and try to be a better person. This experience taught me the power of forgiveness, not only for others, but more importantly for myself. I've learned that true strength is not in retaliation, but in how you recover from the hurt and rebuild yourself in the face of adversity. If someone asked me if I regretted my behavior that night, I would honestly say, yes, I do. But I would also say that it was that mistake that gave me the opportunity to reconnect with myself and redefine what was truly important. Life goes on, and I, for one, am learning how to live better. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.